The Guidelines of Coding, or Programming, 2023. I ought to have made a film on this subject sooner. But better late than never, right? We have a set of rules in life that we follow or ought to follow. Problems and issues usually arise when we don't adhere to those rules. The same is true of code. Coding is the process of carrying out a certain calculation, typically by creating an executable computer program. But for that to happen, a number of regulations and standards must be followed. Let's look at those rules now. Programmers are required to adhere to a set of rules and recommendations when producing code. Hence, coding guidelines are a crucial component of software development. These recommendations are meant to make it easier to maintain understandable, consistent code across various developers and projects. Conventions. Naming conventions are among the most crucial components of coding rules. This covers details like the names of variables, functions, and classes. Variable names, for instance, ought to be clear and descriptive, whereas class and function names ought to be capitalized. Other developers may find it much simpler to comprehend the code and make necessary adjustments if naming conventions are consistently followed across a project. Indentation. Indentation is a key component of coding standards. A program's structure is indicated by indentation, which is crucial for making code readable and simple to comprehend. The majority of coding standards advise employing a consistent indentation pattern, such as 4 spaces between each level of indentation. Commenting. Another crucial component of coding principles is commenting. Comments are used to describe the actions and motivations of a piece of code. The language used in comments should be clear and concise, and they should be positioned in the right places in the code. Aside from updating the code, if necessary, comments should also be changed. Arrangement and structure. Coding standards also cover the best ways to arrange and structure code. This covers details like the proper arrangement of functions and classes, as well as the division of code into files and modules. Code that executes similar functions, for instance, ought to be grouped together, and code that is utilized by many modules ought to be segregated into a different file. Coding standards should also be periodically updated and amended. It is crucial that the coding rules are updated to account for changes in best practices and standards as a result of advancements in technology and programming languages. Conclusion. Coding guidelines are recommendations and norms that programmers are expected to adhere to when producing code. These recommendations are meant to make it easier to maintain understandable, consistent code across various developers and projects. Coding standards cover topics like naming conventions, indentation, commenting, and the best ways to arrange and structure code. Following these recommendations can make it much simpler for other developers to comprehend the code and make any necessary modifications, which will eventually improve the project's overall results. Let's continue on our coding or programming journey. And remember, we must stick to the guidelines or code. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video.